episode 101. We are past that episode 100, which was really fun last week. But now I am so excited for you to meet Angela Brown. Angela Brown is the K-12 Senior Enrollment's Insights Leader at Niche. And she has a lot of personal experience with school communications. And it's so cool that now she gets to serve the folks that, she used to be a school communicator. So you are going to meet her in today's episode. We're really going to dive into kind of what Niche is besides just ranking of your school. She's going to share specific stories that you should be telling on social based on some research that Niche has done. And it's really insightful. So all my APR friends out there, you guys are going to love this research-based episode. She's going to talk about why highlighting teachers are so critical, and she's going to share her best advice, which is don't chase bees, and she's going to explain it all in the interview. So I'm so excited for you to meet Angela today. Just a reminder, you guys, on this podcast, I would love it if you enjoy listening to this every week, and maybe you've been a loyal listener for all 100 episodes, or maybe you're just getting started. But if you have time, which I know you don't have much, but to leave me a 2-sentence review on this podcast. Most people listening on maybe Apple Podcasts, but for wherever you listen, if you could leave me a review, I would be so gracious. We don't really market and sell advertising or anything for this podcast. Is just something that I want to invest in. And a simple way for you to give back to me is just leave me a simple review. Hopefully it's a good review, but I just want an honest review, you guys. So if this is helping you, or if you need something else from me, leave it on the review and I will gladly listen. All right, let's dive in to today's interview with Angela. All right, today's K-12 PR tip is a little advanced warning. Teacher Appreciation Week is May 2nd through the 6th. And I know you're saying it's only March, Andrea. I need to survive March 1st. But getting ready now in preparation for that will save you some headaches and some last minute efforts later. So I've got a great blog on some simple ways to celebrate Teacher Appreciation Week. One, you could create a Facebook post and ask for like video submissions or photos from your families on appreciating a teacher. You could search your school's old, social media comments from the past and get some of the comments about the amazing teachers. And maybe you put those together in some kind of a post. You could just create a simple graphic and ask people to show their love. You could get help from your local business partners and people throughout the community to put up signs like on their marquees, on their, windows, everything of thanking their teachers. And finally, you could create a virtual spirit week where every day you kind of have a different theme. Dress like your teacher day, and can you name all of your elementary teachers? There's different things that you could do on social media. They're all waiting for you there in the blog. And so you can check those out. And again, you'll thank me later when you say, I am already prepared because I know exactly what we're going to do for Teacher Appreciation Week. And we have a whole bunch more of great ideas with Angela in this interview. So let's get started. Angela Brown, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, well, our listeners probably got to get introduced to you a little bit a few weeks ago. We replayed the podcast that I was on when you hosted me on your show. But when we were talking, I'm like, oh my gosh, you need to be on Mastering Social Media for Schools podcast because you have so much great insight. So why don't you just kind of share your background and your role there at Niche?
Sure. And thank you. I'm so flattered and humbled by that comment. So my background is actually in B2B marketing. So in some ways I've come full circle since I started my career in law firms of all places. Way back in the day, I worked in law firm business development and marketing before doing a few stints with a digital agency, a commercial real estate data company, and an IT consulting firm. And then in 2014, I was recruited to a position as the director of marketing communications at a private school in the DC suburbs where I live. And that was both where my career in education started and when I completely fell in love with the industry. So I was there for 7 years, and then I joined Niche last summer because I loved the idea of having an opportunity to help schools all over the country and not just one. And that's what my role at Niche is really about. I create research and content that's designed specifically to help people working in K-12 communications, marketing, and admissions to just do their jobs better and really elevate their roles within their schools.
Yeah, you have a great background. I mean, just with the whole corporate kind of side of things, but then you worked inside of a school for 7 years. So you're
Yeah,
really serving who you used to be, right?
exactly.
Uh,
Exactly.
and that's powerful. So many listeners really recognize the name niche,
Mhm.
but often they only think about the school rating, like because the niche ratings. So can you explain how niche helps with schools and share the important ways that you kind of serve schools out there?
Sure, definitely. And you're right in that Niche is about so much more than school rankings. And so one thing that your listeners might be surprised to know is that Niche actually offers a really robust range of digital marketing services and resources beyond the profiles and rankings that people are most familiar with. Another thing that surprises people is that last year, 27 million students and families used Niche to research schools. So there's a ton of traffic on the platform. And that kind of answers the question of, is this something that my families really use when they're looking at my school? And in most cases, the answer is yes. So whether or not you work with us in a paid capacity, every school in the US has the opportunity to claim their profile, make sure it's up to date. So when families inevitably stumble upon it, you're putting your best foot forward with up to date information. So that is something that I encourage everyone to do, whether or not, you get into a subscription-based relationship with us. Every school in the US actually has a niche profile. It's just a matter of going in and claiming it. And what that also does is it gives you access to a monthly report on how your school's profile is performing so that you can really start to tease out, okay, is this something that prospective and current families are using? Is this something that I can use to support my work in marketing? And if you do partner with Niche, what you're really unlocking there is an opportunity to expand your team, which can be a huge struggle in K-12. As you know, Andrea, teams are lean, budgets are lean. And so you get this really great group of people who love education behind you to support you with optimizing your profile, understanding your data, planning campaigns, and that can help with everything from brand and reputation management and student recruitment to teacher recruitment and community building. So there's actually a lot more power behind the niche name than I think people realize.
Yeah, and you have a lot of free resources out there as
Yes.
well. So where can people find, some of that information? And I know and don't want to like understate what you just shared because many people probably don't know that niche. I mean, it's not just a ranking and claiming that, but how you guys can kind of feed into what schools are doing. That's incredible. But I know that you have a lot of free resources as well.
Yes. And having been on the other side of the desk, I know how important those free resources can be. And so, on the niche website, we have this great blog called Enrollment Insights, and that's where you can find all of our research, all of our podcast episodes. You can find webinars, you can find blog posts, including a guest blog post written by Andrea. That's great. And there's just lots and lots and lots of content out there that is readily available. If you subscribe to our newsletter, you'll get that fed to you monthly right into your inbox. And what that'll also do is two other things. It'll allow you to be part of our research. And so, the more people who respond, the better. And so that allows you to be part of the research studies that we do over the course of the year. And it allows you to be among the first to receive the results when the results come out. And we do webinars as well for all of our research reports where we really take a deep dive into key takeaways and how people can make meaning and take action with the data.
Okay, that is awesome. So we'll make sure to link to those things in the show notes, everybody. So if you're listening now and are on the road, you can come back and check out the show notes. But you led perfectly into my next question because we really wanted to dive into some of the research that you have done that can impact what schools are sharing on social media.
Yeah.
So just kind of describe, like, first of all, just the type of research that you've done and how you collect it.
Sure. So I love this question because this is another area where we work to support schools that a lot of schools might not even know about. And so, this is also an aspect of this role that I got really excited about because I know from my previous life how little research there is out there for K-12. There's a lot for higher ed. You can kind of try to retrofit it onto what you're doing in K-12, but it doesn't always work. And so we do lots of research, both in higher ed and K-12, but we're building out our K-12 research as we speak now that I'm on board. And what we're really trying to do is gather data about school marketing and enrollment that can help schools make decisions. It can help you with building your budget, and it can help you with benchmarking. So last year, we did our first PK-12 State of Enrollment and Marketing Survey, which looked at trends in enrollment and marketing across segments for K-12. So public schools, private schools, religious schools, schools of different sizes. That came out in the fall, and we'll be doing it again this summer. So you can look forward to that with a fall launch. If that survey hits your inbox, please complete it. It's a really important one because we look at everything from team sizes and budgets to whether schools are seeing increases or decreases in interest, where they're planning to invest their marketing dollars going into the next school year, where they're planning to pull back. No surprise, we saw this last year, lots of schools are looking at investing more in digital marketing and less in more traditional things like radio, billboards, print. And we also do a parent survey, which is another really good one that looks at trends in how parents search for and choose schools. That's another one that comes out in the fall. And we also publish annual website benchmarks for both higher ed and K-12. Those are actually coming out this month if you're listening to this episode in February of 2022. And a new survey that I'm really excited about that we'll be launching this spring is a K-12 marketing tech stack survey. And that is going to look at what K-12 schools are using for everything from CRM and web content management to email, texting, social media management platforms, all those questions that you see, in Facebook groups and in membership forums. Does anyone have a good tool for X, or how many people are using Y? We're looking to bring all of that data together, and that will also be analyzed by segment. So if you work in school PR and you only want to see what's happening there, you can. Or if you want to reach across the aisle and see what private schools are doing or discover new tools that might not be on your radar, we're hoping to save you from Googling and posting in groups so that you can actually start seeing, okay, these are the top 5 tools that are being used in my industry. And, I think you and I both know that's a huge need. So that's one that we're really, really excited about. As far as how we do the surveys, we use a combination of our databases. And so schools and parents who have subscribed with us, whether or not those schools are partners, so you get a mix of both. And then Will, my counterpart in higher ed, and we do the data analysis and create the reports and host the webinars.
Okay. So I do not have my APR, but I have a lot of listeners that have, and
Mhm.
they're all geeking out right now, Angela, because they love them some research. And especially when, they don't have to go out and maybe grab it themselves. Of course, doing research in your own community obviously is needed for some things.
Sure.
But you've really done the work, and I am excited about, some of those tools. I think that's going to be super helpful. So I guess, what does kind of the data that you've looked at so far, when we think about like social media specifically, we're thinking about, reaching families, reaching the community. So what does the data really tell us about what parents are craving from their school?
Yeah, so this is a great opportunity to speak to some things we saw in our parent survey, which, looked at school search behavior going into this year. So it's very current. And what I'll say is that it's very consistent with some broader trends that we're seeing in enrollment across the country and the way that parents are looking at schools. And the headline is that it's changed a lot. The way that they think about school, the way that they approach their involvement in their children's education has seen a really huge shift in the last 2 years. They want to be more involved, which we're seeing playing out in the news and on our Facebook feeds. And while, in our 2020 survey, there was a really big emphasis on safety. We were kind of in the throes of school closures and a lot of disruption there. Now they just want to make sure that their kids are getting the best possible education on their terms. And that might sound overly simplistic, but it's really taken on a different meaning now. And so in our data, what that primarily means is that things like individualized attention, they say small class sizes, but really what that means is that they want to make sure that their children are known and that they're being accommodated, and high quality teachers, which, is a catch 22 because we know how hard it's been to recruit and retain great teachers right now. There were also some things that bubbled up to the surface by age group. So elementary school families also really cared about school rankings. And so to that earlier conversation, even though that can be a tension point, it is important to families, especially, Gen Z families who are used to, shopping, so to speak, for schools in the same way that they do everything else. They want that third party endorsement. They want to know that people in the community are happy or dissatisfied with the schools that they're considering. They also cared about social emotional learning and development and diversity. Diversity was that's another one that we're seeing is really bubbling up with younger families and families with younger children. In middle school, it was similar, but that's where you start to see the academic piece, start to come into play. So that was slightly ahead of diversity for that age group. And then for parents of high school students, that's where you really start to see more of a focus on things like AP classes, college counseling services. They're really thinking about college. And so there's a huge opportunity to really lean into that. But across the board, and another question that we asked about how their students had been impacted by the pandemic, social emotional issues, mental health, those were really, really huge. And so, we're recording this in the middle of School Counselors Week. And that's actually something that is a really great thing for schools to emphasize, to the extent that you have a strong counseling program. If you have people who are doing social emotional counseling for students, that's something you might want to highlight because parents are looking for that. They know that it's a need. They're worried about their kids. Across the board, they're just craving normalcy and a recovery from the learning losses and the social emotional challenges that their children have experienced.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you just like explained so many different things in so many different ways, or important stories or important themes that we need to make sure to communicate not only via social media but maybe on your website and in direct communication and all of that. I
Sure.
love that example of sharing some of those resources. I was just thinking about high school, especially now that I've got a daughter that's going to be a senior next year. Well, and one of my stepsons too. But so it's crazy that they're growing up so fast. But one of the things that we're highlighting in our small little school district, I just got done putting a video together, was just on the college prep, that
Yes.
and the opportunities, because one of the graduates from 2021, she went into her freshman year with 33 college credits already. And so
Wow.
that's amazing because you're basically a sophomore. She's going to finish a 4-year degree in 3 years. And we are the smallest school, Angela. Like we don't even have 100 kids in our high school. We have 300 total schools or 300 total students K through 12. So we're a small school, but there's some big opportunities there. But from the outside, people wouldn't know that unless we told
Sure.
that story. And it was awesome because I did it in a video format where the student could talk about how the teachers helped her and what a big help it is for her going into college and knowing she's not, so in their own words, some of
Yeah.
those stories, they don't take that long to put together. You just got to find them and then be willing to, get them out there. What other types of things? I mean, you kind of broke it down. I really liked it. Elementary, middle school, high school. what other kinds of campaigns or stories should be told on social media based on your research?
I think it's a matter of taking those themes and thinking about how you can take them from the bulleted list of features to really demonstrating the benefit. And so, one of the things that came through across the board was the small class size slash individualized attention. And I tell schools all the time, even if you are a school that benefits from having really small classes, some do, some don't. It just depends on the size of your district or of your school. I personally live in a district that's very large. And so depending on where you're zoned, it can be a challenge. What that really means for families is they want to see how each individual student is known, how they're accommodated, how differentiation is happening. And some of those things happen, you've told some great stories, Andrea, about, I think about there's a great story you told about a child that had a prosthetic arm. And, if you're in a large school, just having a story that focuses on a single student and an experience that they're having is powerful. And, if you are doing things to help with differentiation, for example, like if you have a teacher that's giving a student an opportunity to do a special project because they have an area of interest they're really excited about, but it's not part of the curriculum, that's something that you can highlight. Um, and I'm actually really big on highlighting teachers, and there's a range of ways to do that. We talked about how that's something that's really important to families. It's also a really big tension point for schools right now from a recruitment and retention standpoint. And so, and teacher quality was something that was in the top two for every age group. So I want to really kind of stick on that because that was true across segments, so school types, nationwide, urban and rural environments. There were no outliers there. That was something that was true across the board. So your teachers are a really powerful asset. And, some schools do really great teacher profiles, and that's sort of step one. If you're able to have more robust information about your teachers on your website, that's another place where you can do that. A lot of schools just have basic contact information, but even just having photos, so that people can see, oh, that's who might be teaching my child in second grade next year, and start to make those connections. But people really want to see who's in the classroom, why they love being there, how they're engaging their students, and what makes them good at what they do. And what that does is it helps build trust. It helps build confidence with families that they're making the right choice. And it can dispel some of the mythology about what might be happening at school in terms of what you teach and how you teach. And it helps with retention because you're recognizing your teachers in very visible ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would think, I mean, not only helping with draw in families and students and that engagement process, but like you talked about, it's getting really challenging to find qualified staff, whether it's teachers, paras, support staff, administrators. There's a lot of turnover there. So the more, I feel like the more stories you can tell about those teachers, then if prospective employees are looking at the page too, they're going to be like, I fit in here.
Absolutely.
I belong and I could see myself working here, which would be really powerful too. That's awesome. So you have what else do you want to share about the research? I know, as far as like for K-12 communicators, this research is like gold. But why is that research so important for the people listening?
There are so many reasons. And, I to go back to our earlier conversation about some of these groups that we belong to and some of the questions that come up, there are so many of them that could be easily answered if we just had enough published research out there for K-12. So that's something that I've really taken as a priority for myself in this role at Niche, because it helps you to make decisions. It helps you to prioritize that to-do list that always seems to grow without shrinking, without anything being taken away. And it also helps you to make sense out of things that you might be seeing in your community. And so, if you're trying to decide how much money should I be spending on Facebook ads, or is this enrollment decline that we're seeing in our district unique, or is it part of something bigger? Or what channels are parents actually using to engage with schools? And how can we respond to that instead of, an idea from a member of my PTA or a board member, right? And so research can answer all of those questions and take a lot of that guesswork out of school marketing work. And it can also help you say no to things. So when someone does come to you with that new idea, or if you go to a conference and you hear about something that sounds great, but you don't have the bandwidth to do it, looking at the research can actually help you to make those types of decisions so you're not taking shots in the dark.
Yeah, absolutely. So where can our listeners access this research?
It's all in the Enrollment Insights blog. So, and we actually have a filter so that you can go into the drop down, search by research, and see only the content that falls into that category. And we'll make sure that there's a link to that in the show notes. It's very, very helpful. And as we're continuing to build these things out, you'll be able to start to see year over year changes in some of that data, which is so critical right now because this is an industry that is evolving so quickly, probably at a pace that I don't think any of us had seen, prior to the last couple of years. So being able to access the latest and greatest information, not just about what your colleagues are doing in other areas and other school types, but having your fingers on the pulse of what parents are looking for is absolutely invaluable. And there are some tweaks that we're making to that survey for next year to make it even more helpful for people who are working in school PR.
Okay, that's awesome. Yes, we'll have that linked in the show notes. Now, Angela, you host a podcast. So, and
Yes.
and we're talking to podcast listeners who love podcasts. So, can you just tell us the name of that podcast and kind of what you cover on that?
Sure. Yeah, so it's the Enrollment Insights podcast, but it's even more than the name implies. It's an interview style podcast just like this one that we release twice a month, and we talk to people working on the front lines in school marketing, PR, admissions. We look at the challenges they're facing, the problems that they've solved, and how they're evolving their work in this industry that's changing so quickly. So sometimes we talk to folks who are working in house. Sometimes we talk to people like you, Andrea, who are supporting schools, from a partnership capacity. And one thing that we're actually looking at doing this summer at a time when, people are at the beach and have a little bit more time, hopefully, for some leisure and some more of that free PD. We're looking at bringing in people from outside of education from a series that will allow our listeners to hear marketing tips from people who have a different perspective, but that might also be helpful as they're looking at their plans for the next year. So we're excited about that.
Awesome. Yes, Angela has a great show over there. So we'll make sure to get you a direct link to the podcast as well. So our time has gone so fast and I could talk to you forever about all of the research. It's really, really good stuff. So please get your hands on the research itself. I think you'll be really happy. Get signed up to get the new releases that'll be coming out. I think that's awesome. As we kind of wrap up, what would be your best social media tip for our school communicator listeners?
It's so funny because my answer to this question has not changed probably in the last 10 years, and that is don't chase bees. And what I mean for that is before you get a random request from someone or you feel that pressure to take on a new tactic or a new channel because you saw it somewhere, you see that another school is doing it, take a deep breath. Make sure you have a process in place for vetting and reviewing these requests. That's something that I really, really recommend. If you don't have one, we actually have some blog posts that I can link to that can help you along with that a little bit. And, use that data to inform your decisions about how to move forward. I think there's so much pressure to be everywhere all the time, and there are new channels popping up every day depending on what you're reading and who you're talking to. There's this sense of urgency that gets created that, oh goodness, I have to go and I have to, be on, I'll use flim flam and pretend that that's a new thing, so there's all
Right.
these new things that are coming up. But it's actually not sustainable or effective. And so being able to take that pause and really think about the lens of what are our families actually using? What do I actually have the bandwidth to do and do well? Social media is about more than just throwing content out into the ether. There's measurement and strategy involved. And the more channels you have, the harder all of that becomes. So I would just really, really strongly recommend that people take that deep breath, take a moment to stop, and just continue to be really thoughtful about what you actually need and what's really possible.
Yeah. Amen. I say that all the time. People are really overwhelmed in this role. And so being able to say no and have those priorities and feel grounded in them. I think that's the
Yes.
hardest part, right? Because you have all these opinions around you that are like, we got to do this and we got to do that. And it's like, no, that's what coming together and listening to things like this, following the niche research, being part of, national groups like the NSPRA and
Yeah.
your local state SPRA chapters, of being able to say, no, this is what really works. And that will really help you do your job.
I think the flip side of that too is always put yourself in the seat of your audience. And when it comes to social media, I think we forget, and really any sort of communications channel, it's easy to forget. We're so stuck on what we need to do that we don't think about just how much noise is out there. And as overwhelmed as we are as communicators, our families are overwhelmed too. And we are fighting for a share of their Facebook feeds, their Instagram feeds, their inboxes. And adding more to that is not necessarily the right call.
Amen. Really well said. We should end on that note. As we wrap up, what's the best way to stay connected with you, Angela?
So part of why I'm here is that I love social media. And so my personal favorite channels are LinkedIn and Twitter. You can find me on both at Angela M. Brown. That's the suffix of my LinkedIn profile. It's also my Twitter handle. And then the Enrollment Insights blog. There's lots of great information there. Will and I are posting all the time. Every month, new content is popping up. And if there's a topic that you're dying to hear about that we haven't covered, please reach out to me directly and let me know because I'd love to hear from you.
That is awesome. Well, keep up the great work. I'm so excited and glad that we got connected. Excited to see as things change. Like you said, it changes so rapidly. You could do these surveys I feel like quarterly,
Yeah.
although I know they're a lot of work. So that probably makes you breathe into a paper bag. But thanks so much for everything you're doing for all the school communicators out there. Keep it up. And everybody listening, we will see you next time. Bye, Angela.